one thing today. It's important to know small things in great detail. I think that's how learning starts. So we're going to talk about. I've titled it "The Power of the PVC." Okay, so it's like we're PVC car. Okay, so I'm just trying to get this window out of here. Okay, it's gone out. Right, thanks. Okay, so I have put 4 circuits here. I don't know if I can hear the audience, but there are 4 options there. Okay, I have drawn 4 circuits and I've given 4 options. I would like somebody to comment what is circuit number 1. You can take your time. There's no hurry. I would like somebody to comment what is circuit number 1, what is circuit number 2, what is circuit number 3, and what's circuit number 4. If you understood these 4 pictures, you understood 50%. The other 50% is interpreting these pictures from electrograms.
Yuvraj, is it possible for the attendees to reply? Can they unmute themselves or not permitted? Ajit, I am not sure whether they are allowed to unmute. Okay, so I think you'll have to go ahead.
Okay, so I will go ahead. So we are talking about 4 circuits that go from atrium to ventricle through the His bundle, meaning the A to V conduction is through the His bundle, and the hallmark of A to V conduction through the His bundle is a normal HV interval. Everything else is para phenomenon, but the hallmark is a normal HV interval. So we are talking about tachycardias with a 1:1 AV relationship with a normal HV interval. So when you have tachycardias with 1:1 AV relationship with a normal HV interval, these are the 4 that we would have to consider. Okay, so the 4 circuits are, I will go through them one by one. So the first circuit that we need to know clearly is what we called AV nodal reentry. So this is circuit number 1. Now, what we need to understand is that AV nodal reentry is actually a tachycardia contained in the atrium. The AV node is an atrial structure, except the penetrating His bundle. You can see the penetrating His bundle here. So you can see the penetrating His bundle here, except for the penetrating His bundle part of the AV node. This entire blue oval is the AV node. Except for the penetrating His bundle part of the AV node, the rest of the AV node is an atrial structure. So this is what happens in AV nodal reentry. There is a slow input into the AV node. It is basically just the transitional fibers of the AV node. Some people have a slow bunch of transitional fibers that goes into the compact His bundle. And then it's debated a little bit, but mostly agreed upon that in the compact His bundle, it turns around and connects to the other bunch of transitional fibers of the AV node, which is what we call the fast pathway. These bunch of transitional fibers of the AV node go back to the atrium. And then there is one little bit of mysterious bit of atrium here, which we are still not really sure which exactly is that bit of the atrium that connects this fast pathway transitional cells to the slow pathway transitional cells. And then it goes back. So as you can understand here, you do not really need the ventricle for this tachycardia. You do not really need the atrium for this tachycardia. The rest of the atrium, you only need a little bit of the atrium. The circuit is contained in this small bit of the atrium. So this is AV nodal reentrant tachycardia, the typical form of what we call the slow fast AV nodal reentrant tachycardia. Slow because it goes down the slow limb of the transitional fibers, and fast because it goes up the fast limb of the transitional fibers. Now let's come to circuit number 2. That is the simplest circuit. It starts in the atrium. It goes down the transitional fibers of the AV node. In this situation, I have drawn the transitional fibers being the fast pathway. In some other cases, it might go exclusively through the slow pathway, but it only goes down in one direction, enters the compact AV node, the compact His bundle, goes through the penetrating bundle and goes to both the ventricles. Clear? Now I'll go to circuit number 4. We'll come to 3 last. So circuit number 4 is what we call an accessory pathway or a conventional accessory pathway. So here from the atrium, let's start with the atrium. It goes into the His bundle through the transitional fibers. Here once again I've drawn the fast pathway as the transitional fibers, goes to the compact His, goes through the penetrating AV node, goes to the right ventricle and the left ventricle, and then the breakout point is distal. Okay, the His Purkinje system doesn't break out at the base of the heart; it breaks out distally, and then it goes through some ordinary myocardium to the insertion point of the conventional accessory pathway, which is near the annulus. This black line is the annulus, and then it goes up the conventional accessory pathway and actually enters the atrium. That is very important here. It has to re-enter the atrium and activate a little bit of atrium for it to get back into the His and continue the circuit. Now contrast this with this. Contrast number 4 with 1 and 2. The essential difference between 4 and 1 and 2 is that in 2, there is no re-entry. In 1, you need to get in to only a little bit of atrium for the circuit to continue, meaning you can actually dissociate most of the atrium from the circuit. But here, you really can't dissociate the atrium from the circuit. So that's a key difference between 1 and 4. Here, if you dissociate the atrium from the circuit by a premature atrial complex or a premature beat which comes up the accessory pathway and captures the atrium, the circuit is either extinguished if it becomes refractory, or it's preponed, meaning the premature beat will reset the entire circuit and the next beat in the entire circuit will be faster. Whereas here you don't need to do that. The circuit can exist independent of most of the atrium. Now we will come to number 3. Number 3 is a special form of accessory pathway. It's actually pretty rare, but conceptually it's important to understand this. So this, let's start with the compact His bundle. It goes from the compact His bundle down the penetrating AV bundle, and then it breaks through the His Purkinje breakout point, and then it comes up to the base, and in the base it finds an accessory pathway to get back. But see where it gets back in. This accessory pathway actually gets back into the compact His bundle. It will also activate the atrium because the atrium is attached to the compact His bundle through the transitional fibers. But you can see that for this circuit to sustain, this is immaterial. You do not need the atrium. The atrium is just a bystander part. You don't need atrial activation, meaning this circuit can exist with VA dissociation. This circuit can exist with dissociation of some parts of the atrium. This circuit needs the whole atrium to be captured to continue. Understanding this concept is key. So that's concept number 1. How much atrium do you need for each of these circuits to continue? So this, by the way, is a nodoventricular accessory pathway. The accessory pathway is from the node to the ventricle. So this is concept number 1. How much of atrium do you need for each of these circuits to continue? Here, of course, it's not a re-entry. Anything can happen in the ventricle, and that will not affect the tachycardia. Whatever you do to the ventricle, whatever happens to the ventricle will not affect the tachycardia. So concept number 1, how much atrium do you need for the circuit to continue? No atrium, all of the atrium, little bit of the atrium. Concept number 2. Now, let us look at how this is activating the ventricle, okay? So it has gone through the compact His bundle and it has come and it has activated the ventricle at this time. Now, supposing we put a PVC, or a PVC comes at this exact moment where I put the pointer. So a PVC comes at the moment that this activation is reached. The timing of the PVC is critical. A PVC comes at the moment that this activation is reached here. What will happen to that PVC in circuit number 1? Nothing. The PVC will stay as a PVC. This PVC will not be able to get into the circuit because for this PVC to get into the circuit, it has to go up here. It can't go up here because this is already come down here and this path is refractory. So what I'm trying to say is, if a PVC occurs or if we put a PVC at the time that the His is depolarized, that is at or just after the His bundle depolarization, if a PVC occurs, it will do nothing to the circuit. It will do nothing to the circuit also, obviously, because this circuit has got nothing to do with the ventricles. This is just atrium coming down here. So if a PVC occurs here, this PVC will not go up. It doesn't matter what a PVC does to the circuit, what the PVC is, what the timing of the PVC. The PVC is immaterial to the circuit. But for this circuit, let us say the ventricular activation is reached here, and at that point, a PVC originates from here. Either we put the PVC or a PVC originates spontaneously. What happens? The next atrial activation will become early. That will not happen here. So an atrial activation becoming early after the His bundle is activated, meaning when the antegrade part of the circuit is refractory. After the His bundle is activated means antegrade part of the circuit is refractory. So if a PVC occurs after the antegrade part of the circuit is refractory and that PVC gets into the atrium, that means there is one more route of going from the ventricle to the atrium, and that route is what we call an accessory pathway. So if the A is advanced by the PVC, which occurs at or after the His, this means there is an accessory pathway. Now, and the advanced A will advance the His. Okay, so first there will be atrial advancement, and then there will be His advancement, and this His advancement will advance the next V. Because this PVC will go from here, early A, early H, early V. What will happen if that same PVC occurs in this circuit? So the His bundle is activated. So this antegrade part is now refractory. A PVC occurs at this moment. What will it do? It will advance the His. It may or may not advance the A. It may advance the A, it may not advance the A. It depends on whether these transitional fibers are refractory. The transitional fibers of the AV node are the ones at decrement. They may be refractory. So it may not go into the A, but it will advance the His. And very importantly, here the His will be advanced and the A before the His will not be advanced, because the route of this PVC to the His is not via the A. The route of this PVC to the His is directly into the His. Unlike this, the route of the PVC into the His is through the A. So here A will be advanced and then His will be advanced and then V will be advanced. Here His will be advanced, the A may or may not be advanced, and after the His is advanced, the V will be advanced. Okay, so here's the concept number 2. A His refractory PVC or a PVC when the antegrade limb of the circuit is refractory, if it does not reach the atrium, there may not be an accessory pathway. If it reaches the atrium, there is an accessory pathway. That accessory pathway may be going directly into the atrium, or it may be going to the His and then to the atrium. If the PVC advances the His, it may be going via the A and then the His, or it may be going straight to the His. So all you need to do is measure the VH interval after the PVC and the VA interval after the PVC. If the VA interval is early and the VH interval is similarly early, this means it is a conventional accessory pathway. If the VH interval is early, but the VA interval is not early, it is a nodoventricular accessory pathway. So I hope we got that much, because now we are going to the next concept. Now we can have this also. See, in all of these circuits, there may be what we call bystander accessory pathways. these axillary pathways are just sitting there. They are not inserted into the antegrade limb of the circuit. But let us see what will happen in this case. The antegrade limb of the circuit is coming down here. This ventricle is activated here. So this entire His-Purkinje system is refractory, and a PVC comes here. That PVC might choose to go up this accessory pathway. It actually may not go up this accessory pathway. If a PVC comes closer to this accessory pathway, it will just simply go up this accessory pathway without going through this. What will it happen? The A will become early, but since that A is not connected to the H will not become early, and the next V will not become early, which means it will. So if you have a bystander accessory pathway which is not connected to the circuit, it will advance the next atrial activation, but it will not advance the next ventricular activation, the next His activation or the ventricular activation. So these are the only three concepts that you need to understand the subsequent tracings. Very important concepts to understand. Okay, whether you can dissociate atrium from the circuit, whether a PVC which comes at the time that the antegrade limb of the circuit is refractory, that is a PVC that comes when the His is depolarized, is able to advance the next atrial activation or the next His activation, and whether that translates into the subsequent ventricular activation being early. So these are. Now let us see the application of these concepts. So here. So the first thing we need to ensure is that the PVC comes at or after the His. So the first thing we need to see is look at the His. So here is the His, the red is the His, here is the His. And this line is your pacing spike. And here is the pacing spike. That pacing spike is fallen after the PVC. So this PVC is come when the antegrade limb of the circuit is refractory. So this is basically what has happened. So what has happened? When the PVC came, then we are measuring the A. So here is A to A, 370. Here is A to A, 370. And here is A to A. The next A to A is early. So this means that there is one route of going from V to A other than the penetrating His bundle. And that route is what we call the accessory pathway. That is why this A became early. And what happened when the A became early? When the A became early, the next V also became early. So this means that this A that became early, meaning this accessory pathway, is connected to the next V. So if the His refractory PVC advances the return atrial activation and resets the tachycardia, this confirms the presence of an accessory pathway participating in the tachycardia. So this is what is happening. This PVC is come at this particular point, okay? His is activated and then the PVC is come. That PVC is gone up this accessory pathway. It is made this A early. That A is made the next H early. The H is not very clearly visible, but here it is. It is also early. And that H is made the next V early. So this is the simplest translation of this concept. Now let us go to this. What is happening here? So let's once again go step by step. Okay. So here is the His, and here is the His, and here is the His, and here is the His. So we have a premature ventricular complex which has fallen after the His is depolarized. And what has happened here? There is no atrial activation. The tachycardia has just stopped. You can see that after this premature ventricular complex, which has fallen just after the His, here is the His, the tachycardia has stopped. So what is happening? This premature ventricular complex is unable to go to the atrium. This premature ventricular complex did not go to the atrium. That's no big deal. It cannot go to the atrium. If there is no accessory pathway, it will not go to the atrium. But if there is no accessory pathway and it does not go to the atrium, nothing will happen to the tachycardia. So now what has happened? This premature complex did not go to the atrium, and that coincided with the tachycardia stopping. So how can that happen? Two possibilities, sheer coincidence. that at that moment the tachycardia just decided to stop. Possibility number 2, this premature ventricular complex, when it came, the accessory pathway was refractory. The accessory pathway was not ready to conduct that early. So the premature ventricular complex came at this particular moment. At this particular moment, this structure was refractory to electrical stimulation. So that never reached the atrium. And if that never reaches the atrium, the whole circuit is extinguished. The whole circle is extinguished. So you have to demonstrate this more than once. If it happens more than once, it's not a chance. If it happens once, it may be by chance. So if a his-refractory PVC terminates in tachycardia without conducting to the atrium, this is again an orthodromic AV re-entry using an accessory pathway. Now what is happening here? So here is the his, here is the his, and here is the his. And after the his, there is a pacing spike, and that pacing spike is caused the PVC. And what is happening to the A, even without measurement, you can see A to A, this A to A is actually very long. I'll put the measurement shortly, but even without measurement by eyeballing, you can see this is a normal A to A, this is a normal A to A, this A to A is definitely long. So what has happened? This PVC could not have gone up the AV node, because it has come after the his. PVC has gone up to the atrium when the AV node is not available to take it. So it has to have some other route to go up to the atrium. How do you know it went up the atrium? Because the next day got late. See, it's 360. The next day became 420. That was 360 and that became 420. So the next atrial depolarization became delayed the next atrial repolarization. So what is happening is, so an accessory PVC came when the ventricle had become refractory, and the next day became late. Why? Because this is a slowly conducting structure. This is conducting slowly. It is prone to decrement in the retrograde direction. Some accessory pathways are prone to decrement in the retrograde direction. Just like they can block in the retrograde direction, or they can conduct with normal speed in the retrograde direction, they can conduct slowly in the retrograde direction. So you will find this if it conducts slowly in the retrograde direction. So what happens? The PVC is early, but the A is actually later than expected. The PVC is come when the his is refractory. So it can go up only if there is an accessory pathway. It has gone up. Not only has it gone up, it has gone up very slowly. So that is a decrementing accessory pathway. Meaning, if a his refractory PVC does anything to the next A, this means that there is an accessory pathway. Now, what is happening here? So, I apologize for the noise in between, but this is V1. Okay, where I put my pointer here is V1. It is very important to notice.
Ajit, I can quickly ask you something. Sorry to interrupt you. In the previous one, why can't it be that the tachycardia stopped and then restarted?
Possible. We need to show these things more than once. Like in any case where there is a termination, we need to show it more than once.
Okay. Fine.
So we need to observe clearly where the PVC comes. Look at the site of the PVC. So here this is V1 and V1 is negative. Okay. So here is a V1 negative PVC and this has fallen just after the his. And what has happened to the next atrial deflection? I have not put the numbers here. I think, I have not put the numbers here. Nothing has happened to the next atrial deflection. So the PVC is not gone up to the atrium. So what does it mean? It only means that the PVC didn't go to the atrium. That's all. We have to think of the reasons why a PVC would not go to the atrium. It just means that it didn't go to the atrium. So here is the same tachycardia, and here is a PVC. Now look at V1. V1 starts with a positive deflection, meaning the PVC is coming from the posterior ventricle now. We have put this PVC, you can see a pacing spike. When the PVC came from the posterior ventricle, I measured here, the A to A is become 348. It was 388, 388 became 348, meaning the A to A became earlier when the PVC came from the posterior ventricle, but the A to A, nothing happened to it when the PVC came from the anterior ventricle. Why? Because there is a connection from the ventricle to the atrium other than the AV node, which is situated in the posterior ventricle. So when you look at the PVC, before you see whether the AA has been reset, the first thing is, of course, you see if it has fallen at or after the his. The second thing you look at is not whether the AA is reset, it's the shape of the PVC. By looking at the shape of the PVC, try and figure out where it has come from. It has to come from reasonably close to where the expected ventriculoatrial connection is. So it will be able to get into the circuit only if it comes from reasonably close to the ventricular atrial connection. Now, what is this? So once again, here is a tachycardia going on. I've measured out everything. So here is our PVC, here is the pacing stimulus, okay, and here are his measurements. Here is the H, here is the H, and this PVC is fallen exactly on the H. And you look at where it has come from. This has come from somewhere in the anterior ventricle. V1 is negative, V1 is completely negative, but more importantly, it has come from the base of the heart. Look at this. This is 1, 2 and AVF, okay? In the PVC also, 2 is positive, AVF is negative, 1 is positive. So your 2 positive, AVF negative. Negative means it is come from the base of the anterior ventricle, which is where you would expect a right-sided accessory pathway to be. And why did we put this PVC from there? Because the earliest day, as you can see here, is in the his catheter. So you would, if there is an accessory pathway, you would expect this accessory pathway to be somewhere near the his, meaning the base of the anterior ventricle. So that is why we put that PVC there. We have to put the PVC from the anticipated site of the accessory pathway, which we decide by looking at the earliest A. So coming back to the discussion. So the PVC came, and this is the A to A measurement. So the A to A was 318, and the A to A after the PVC is 280. So definitely there is an accessory pathway. There is no doubt. There is a connection from the ventricle to the atrium somewhere in the base of the anterior ventricle, because when the his is refractory, the next A is early. Now, what has happened to the V? So this is one thing which you need to understand. If you want to measure the V, you have to measure 2 VV. See, the point is, you can't measure this VV because V caused this VV, right? We put a PVC, this PVC will cause this V. So you can't really measure this V because this is the V that V caused. So we have to measure 2 VVs to see if they became early. So these 2 VVs are 630, and the next 2 VVs, that is, this is the V that should have become early by this PV. So this PVC, let us say there is an accessory pathway participating in the tachycardia. So if so, the A would be early, and the early A would cause this early V. Now this early A has not caused this early V. The A is early, it's 280, no doubt. It's 40 milliseconds early. But the V is not early. These 2 V's together are 630. These 2 V's together are also 628. Why is not early? Look at what else has happened. See, where does the A connect to? In an accessory pathway where the A comes before the H, the A connects into the H. And if you remember our diagram, what is the route from the A to the H? The route from the A to the H is the transitional fibers of the AV node. And those are the ones that decrement, right? The transitional fibers of the AV node are that's decrement. So see what has happened. Here is the AH interval during the tachycardia cycle line. The AH interval, here is A, here is H. The AH interval is 130 during our tachycardia. But when our PVC came, the A became early by 40 milliseconds. What was 320 became 280. Now, an A which was early by 40 milliseconds promptly made the AV node decrement. The A has to connect to the H by the transitional fibers, which have a property of decrement. So here, unfortunately for us, the AV node decremented by exactly the same measure as the atrium became early. So we have an accessory pathway which has gone into the atrium, and that atrium is gone into the AV node. But while going into the His, the AV node decremented by the exact same interval, and therefore we cannot say if the V became early or not. So here you have to consider both possibilities. One is that this A is just a bystander A. This accessory pathway is just a bystander. This accessory pathway, this A is actually not connected to this His. There is an accessory pathway somewhere where we don't have a catheter. That is one possibility. There is an accessory pathway somewhere where we don't have a catheter. There is a bystander accessory pathway at the His area, and our ventricular activation, the PVC is gone up the bystander accessory pathway which is in the His area. This A is actually not connected to this H. Somewhere else there is some other A which we are not recording, through which it has gone to the H. So this is actually not a accessory pathway which is connected here. So how do you resolve the problem? Well, like I mentioned first, any observation has to be reproducible. So here all you do is just keep on repeating it. Just keep repeating it and see if you get the same result or a different result. So here we have repeated the exact same thing, the exact same PVC from the exact same site at the exact same interval. So here is the H, here is the H, here is the H, and here is the H. The PVC is fallen just on the H. So we know that this PVC cannot conduct up the AV node. The antegrade route is already the AV node, and that is blocked. It cannot go up the AV node. Okay, and this is come from the base of the anterior ventricle. Very important to note that V1 is negative, 2 is positive, AVF is slightly positive. Yeah. So this PVC is, at this point, the catheter is slightly higher than the previous point because AVF is now a little more positive than the other one, but the base of the anterior ventricle. But see what has happened now? Nothing has changed. Say the exact same timing PVC from almost the exact site, maybe a few millimeters apart. But see what has happened to the atrial activation. The AA was 329, which became 300. So the atrial activation has got preponed, which means there is another route of conduction from the ventricle to the atrium. And what has happened to the ventricular activation? The two ventricular activations that we measured, 654 became 638. So the early AA has transmitted to an early VV, which means this early A is actually attached into the circuit. Why are we able to make this inference now? Because of this. See, this early A caused some decrement in the transitional fibers of the AV node. So it was 135 during the tachy. It became 148 here. Just by sheer chance, at this moment, the transitional fibers of the AV node, the AH decremented by only 13 milliseconds, whereas the AA was advanced by 30 milliseconds. So the remainder 16, so exactly to be precise, it is 29 milliseconds, 329, 300. So the 29 minus 13, the exact same number, 16 milliseconds. The VV got preponed by 16 milliseconds. So this just shows the importance of being able to do something repeatedly. If you do something once, it can happen by chance. Twice, unlikely to be by chance. Thrice, definitely not a chance. So very important to make sure that you repeat every maneuver. You don't have to keep on putting it multiple. In practice, what you do is you tell your technician, or if you have to do it yourself, you measure the point at which his comes. Let us say the his comes at a coupling interval. So you're going to put a PVC from here. Let's say it comes at a coupling interval of 300 milliseconds. What you do is 300 milliseconds, you put once, twice, thrice, at least 3 times. And then what you do is you put 290 milliseconds once, twice, thrice. 280 milliseconds 3 times. 270 milliseconds 3 times. And then you go and see if it was reproducible. You don't stop and measure at the end of each PVC. It will take forever to do that. So what you do is you just measure on the hiss and start just after the hiss. Put 3 at that cycle length, 3 10 milliseconds premature, 3 10 milliseconds, but never put 1 and then go back and check. So that's the importance of being able to reproduce. So what is happening here? Here is the hiss, here is the hiss, here is the hiss, here is a PVC. What is happening? Nothing is happening. What can we say? We can say nothing. See, if a hiss refractory PVC did not reset the tachycardia after being close to the expected site of the accessory pathway, if it did not reset the tachycardia, well, it did not reset the tachycardia, that's all. Not all PVCs may be able to capture the accessory pathway. So if it doesn't reset, it means nothing. So if it may not reset, if it is far from the pathway, like for example, an apical PVC may not reset. So don't put a PVC from the apex. It's, you're going far from the pathway. And one other small thing, if there is a bundle branch block, it may not work. Now, the last thing I want to show here. So here is the H. The green here is the H. Okay. The HH is 290 and here is the PVC. Okay. This is V. This is RV. During tachycardia, this has come at 260. Okay. This PVC is come at 260. Now, what happened to the tachycardia when the PVC came at 260? Essentially, what has happened is, if you just measure the VV intervals, the tachycardia is just continuing. Nothing has happened to the tachycardia. There is a VV, 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 and this is also 280. Even though not measured, it's 280. It's just, the tachycardia is just continuing. But see what happened during the PVC. Now, this PVC is once again hiss refractory, because here is the hiss measurement. Okay, here is the hiss measurement. This PVC is fallen just after it's fallen actually well after the hiss. Here's the hiss measurement. The PVC is fallen comfortably after the hiss. The PVC that has fallen comfortably after the hiss, what it has done is it has made the next hiss early. This hiss is become early. And see what has happened to the A. No A. One A just disappeared. A completely disappeared. And then the A. So what does this mean? This means two things. A hiss refractory PVC is able to enter the circuit. We know it is able to enter the circuit because the H became early. So it is able to enter the circuit. It is entering the H. And after it enters the H, it does not exit into the A. And when it does not exit into the A, it does nothing to the tachycardia. So this is what we told in the beginning. The atrium is not required for this tachycardia. So if a hiss refractory PVC resets the H and that resets the next V, but like this, there is no A happening at that time. It is very obvious. It is an accessory pathway which is inserting into the hiss. The A is just a byproduct. So this would be what we call a nodoventricular reentrant tachycardia. So I'll stop with that. These are very basic concepts, but you need to be very, very clear about this. If you're very clear about this one basic concept about, making sure that your PVC is falling on or just after the hiss, then making sure that your PVC is being delivered from close to the anticipated site of the accessory pathway by looking at the earliest A, and then seeing what is the first thing that became early after the PVC came. Was it the H or was it the A? And then seeing, did that thing which became early, whether it was the H or the V, if it made the next V early, if you have this entire combination of findings, you have defined the entire circuit. And this one, you must always be careful. If the H is in this circuit, if the AH is in the circuit, consider that sometimes a decrement in the AV node might affect your measurements. So I'll stop with that. I hope I've clarified one basic concept clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jeet. I think beautifully depicted. What I like most about this whole presentation was that I think you did not try to overteach. Sometimes you have so much of information, it only adds to confusion.